I stopped marking the spelling test halfway through the word necessary and stared at my phone like it had spat at me. The text from my future mother-in-law read, "Darling, I think it's best you sit this one out. The Henderson Foundation Gala isn't really your scene. You understand? I didn't understand. That was the whole problem." I read it 3 more times in the staff room of Maplewood Elementary in North Toronto. The smell of someone's microwaved butter chicken hanging in the air, and the November rain ticking against the window. My coffee had gone cold. Grade 3 spelling tests were stacked in front of me, half of them with little doodles in the margins because 7-year-olds are honest about boredom in a way adults forget how to be. My name is Hadley. I'm 31. I teach grade 3 at a public school in a not fancy part of the city. And at the time this happened, I was engaged to a man named Calder Whitfield Doyle. His mother was Persephone Whitfield Doyle. Yes, those are real names. No, I'm not going to apologize for how they sound. The hyphen alone tells you most of what you need to know. I'd been with Calder for almost 4 years. 3 of them serious, the last one engaged. He worked in commercial real estate, the kind where deals come with custom leather portfolios and dinners at Canoe. He was kind in a quiet way. Read poetry on the subway. Cried at the end of the Blue Jays season every year, even when they were terrible. I loved him. I want to say that first, before anything else. Because if I don't, the rest of the story sounds like I was just waiting for an excuse. His mother was the chair of the Henderson Children's Foundation Holiday Gala. Every December, she ran it out of a ballroom at the Royal York downtown. Black tie, ice sculptures, a silent auction where people bid on weekend trips to Mont Tremblant, like they were ordering coffee. She'd been planning it since August. I'd seen the seating charts on her dining room table when we went for Sunday dinner in Forest Hill. The names handwritten in fountain pen because typing was, apparently, for the help. She'd had me at her right hand at the gala last year, introduced me as Calder's fiancé. Well, then girlfriend, but you get the idea. To a string of donors I didn't know how to talk to. I'd worn a navy dress from Simon's, the one I'd saved up for, and a pair of earrings my grandmother left me when she died. I'd thought I did fine. Apparently not. I texted back, "Is something wrong? Did I do something?" She replied in 12 minutes. No, nothing like that. It's just, these donors are very particular about the people they meet. They expect a certain caliber of company. I don't want you to feel out of place. I'm doing this for you, darling. I read caliber and felt my jaw click. I called Calder. He was driving back from a showing in Mississauga, and his voice came to the car speakers all echoey and far away. I told him what his mother had texted me. There was a long pause, the sound of a turn signal. "She didn't mean it like that," he said. "How did she mean it?" "Hadley, look, the gala. There's a lot riding on this one. The Hendersons are giving a big keynote donation and Mom's been stressed. She just wants the night to go smoothly. Can we talk about it tonight?" "Calder," I said. "She told me I'm not the right caliber for her donors." "What does that mean?" He sighed. I hate that sigh. It's the sigh of a man trying to be diplomatic with the wrong person. "She said something at brunch last week." He said something at brunch last week. He said, "Some friend of hers asked what you did, and Mum said you were a teacher, and the friend made a face. And Mum got embarrassed." I think she's just trying to avoid that again. "Embarrassed," I said. "She got embarrassed that I'm a teacher." Hadley, Calder. Can you please, just for me, this once let it go? It's one night, I'll make it up to you. We can do something just us, on the 23rd. I promise. You want me to stay home from your mother's Christmas gala, I said. Because she's ashamed that her son's fiancé teaches 8-year-olds how to read. It's not like that. It was exactly like that. I knew it was. He knew it was. But I had 30 minutes left of lunch period, and 22 kids waiting for me to come back and explain long vowel sounds, and I didn't have the energy to fight a fight I'd already lost before I picked up the phone. "Okay," I said. "Okay, I won't go." "Thank you," he said, like I'd done him a kindness. I hung up. Mrs. Thei, the grade 4 French teacher, looked up from her lunch and said, "You all right, Had?" I said, "I'm fine." I went back to my classroom and taught the rest of the day. We did a read aloud of the hockey sweater, because it was Rosh Carrier season and the kids needed something familiar. One daughter is a my student's. A little boy named Rav, whose family had moved here from Bengaluru 2 years earlier, asked me what a sweater store was, and I explained the Eaton's catalog and watched 22 faces try to imagine a world without Amazon. I made it through to the bell. I packed my bag. I cried in a staff parking lot for exactly 3 minutes because that was as long as I could spare before someone walked by. Then I drove home. I lived in a one-bedroom in Leslieville back then, in a low-rise above a Portuguese bakery that smelled like custard tarts every morning. Calder kept saying we should look at houses in Leaside after the wedding. His mother had already sent us listings. I'd nodded and smiled and gone back to my walk-up because the walk-up was mine and the rent was almost reasonable, and I'd hung every single picture frame in there with my own hands. That night, I sat on my couch with a tea and watched the rain. I thought about my mum, who'd been a nurse at the Civic in Ottawa for 31 years, and who'd raised me and my brother on shift, differentials and craft dinner. I thought about how she'd cried when I told her I'd gotten into teachers' college, not because she was proud, exactly, though she was, but because she said, "Oh honey, people are going to take that for granted forever and you'll never know how much they needed you." I thought about Persephone's word. Calibre. And then my phone buzzed. It was my vice principal. She wanted to know if I could cover the school's holiday pageant on the 22nd. Mrs. Lynn had a family thing. They needed someone to run the show. The 22nd was 2 nights before the gala. "Yes," I said out loud to no one. "Yes, I'll do it," I texted her back. Then I sat there for a long time and didn't text Calder. The next 2 weeks were quiet. Calder and I didn't fight about it again, because we didn't talk about it again. He brought me a coffee on a Saturday morning and asked how the pageant prep was going, and I told him fine, and he said his mother was running herself ragged with the gala, and could I send her a little note saying I hoped it went well. He said it like he was asking me to pass the salt. I said, "I'll think about it." He didn't push. I went into school every day and rehearsed 12 grade 3s through a nativity scene that included, by special request, a Canadian goose. Arav was a wise man. A girl named Sophie was the angel. They were so serious about their lines that I had to bite my cheek not to laugh. On the 20th, I went to my mother's place in Ottawa for one night, because she'd asked me to come help her with the tree. She still lived in the bungalow I grew up in Alta Vista. The same one with the chipped front step and the kitchen tile from 1987. I drove the 4 hours up the 401 in fog and listened to a podcast about Canadian crime that I can't remember a single detail of now. She made me tomato soup and grilled cheese, because that's what she's made me when I've been sad since I was 9. She didn't ask what was wrong. She just put the bowl in front of me and waited. "Calder's mum doesn't want me at our gala," I said, finally. She said I'm not the right caliber. My mother chewed her grilled cheese, slow and thoughtful. Then she said, Hadley, "Listen to me, I want you to listen, because I'm only going to say this once." I listened. "There is no version of a man who lets his mother say that to you," she said. "And is a man you should marry. I don't care how nicely he asks. I don't care what he buys you. I don't care if he reads you Leonard Cohen in bed. A man who lets you be diminished to keep his mother comfortable is a man who will let you be diminished for the rest of your life. Do you hear me?" I heard her. I didn't say anything. I ate my soup. We watched a Bruce Springsteen documentary on the CBC and went to bed at 10. I drove back the next day, and I didn't tell Calder I'd been gone. The 22nd came. Pageant night. I wore the same green dress I always wear for school events, the one with the little white collar that makes me look about 23 years old. The gym at Maplewood was packed with parents and grandparents, and a bunch of little brothers and sisters running up and down the aisles. We did the show. The goose forgot one line. Arav, the wise man, recovered for him. Sophie, the angel, sang Silent Night in a high, clear voice and made about half the room cry. Afterwards, the parents lined up to thank me. They always do. One mum, a woman I'd seen at drop-off but never really talked to, took my hand and said, "Miss Hadley, he's been so happy this year. He used to come home from school and cry. Now he sings in the bath. I needed you to know that." I said, "Thank you. He's a wonderful kid." She squeezed my hand and walked away. I went home. I poured myself a glass of wine. I sat on the couch in my green dress and my running shoes. I'd kicked off the heels at the door. And I thought, I am going to remember this night. Not the gala. This night. The 23rd, I tutored at a learning center in Riverdale that I'd been working at on Tuesday and Thursday evenings for about a year. It was extra money mostly, but I'd also gotten attached to one of my regulars. A little boy named Theo. 8 years old, big brown eyes, hearing aids in both ears, on the spectrum. We'd been working on reading comprehension together since the previous spring. His mum was a single mum, worked at a hospital in some kind of administrative role, was always running 10 minutes late because of traffic. She'd cried in front of me twice in the past year. Once when Theo had read a whole paragraph aloud without help, and once when she'd lost a babysitter and didn't know how she was going to manage Christmas break. That Tuesday evening, the 23rd, Theo came in wearing reindeer antlers and a hoodie with his name embroidered on it. He showed me his spelling words. He told me in his careful, deliberate way about a Lego set he was getting for Christmas. He read me half a chapter of the one and only Ivan and only stopped twice to ask what a word meant. I told him I was proud of him. I told him he was one of the smartest readers I knew. I meant it. His mum picked him up at 7. She apologized for being late. I told her not to worry. I went home. The 24th was the gala. I worked it. I want to say that plainly, because I think that's the part nobody saw coming, not even me. I'd signed up months earlier to help run the children's craft table at the Henderson Children's Foundation's Free Family Afternoon, a separate event they put on for kids whose families use the foundation's services. It happened on the same day as the gala, but in the afternoon at a community center in Scarborough. Very different vibe. Hot chocolate, cardboard reindeer. About 40 kids and their parents, most of them recipients of the foundation's literacy grants. I'd signed up before I'd even known about the gala Uninvited. I almost canceled that morning out of pride. I almost said, why should I volunteer for this woman's pet cause when she doesn't want me eating canapés in her ballroom? But I'd promised. And Theo's mother had told me once that her son had gotten his first set of phonics books through the Henderson Foundation. I'd promised. So I went. The community center was warm and a bit shabby and smelled like floor polish and gingerbread. There were 2 other volunteers, a woman from a nearby church and a university student doing his service hours. We set out construction paper and glue sticks and pipe cleaners. We poured hot chocolate. We helped kids make ornaments out of clothespins and bits of felt. About 45 minutes in, I looked up and saw Theo's mum walk through the door with Theo at her side. She blinked at me. I blinked at her. "Miss Hadley," she said. "Hi," I said. "Hi, Theo." Theo waved at me, the small, careful wave he does when he's pleased. His mum laughed, a tired, slightly disbelieving laugh. "You're here too?" "Volunteering," I said. Is Theo part of the Foundation's program? She nodded. Since he was 4. They paid for his first OT assessment and his speech therapy for a year before our insurance kicked in. They're the reason he's where he is. I said, that's wonderful. She said, I'm running the program now actually. The early literacy stream. I started in September. I said, oh. She said, what about you? I said, I'm just a volunteer. She looked at me for a second. Then she said, are you not going to the gala tonight? I felt my face get hot. I said, no. I had a conflict. She nodded slowly. She didn't ask. She's the kind of person who doesn't ask. Then she said, I'm going to give a speech tonight. They asked me to, about what the foundation has meant to our family. I said, that's incredible. She said, Theo's coming with me for part of it. The kids segment. Before dinner. I said, he'll do great. She said, will you be all right? I said, yeah, I'll be fine. She put a hand on my arm. Just for a second. Then she went to help Theo pick out a glue stick. I want to tell you exactly what I was feeling at that moment. But I don't think I have the words for it. I want to say it was vindication, but it wasn't, not really. Vindication is too neat. What I felt was more like watching a piece of the world I hadn't realized was crooked finally come straight in my head. Persephone had told me I wasn't the right caliber for her donors, and here was Theo's mum, who just told me she was the keynote speaker at the gala with her son. The very people Persephone was throwing the whole event for. The people I wasn't supposed to embarrass in front of. I finished my shift at the craft table. I hugged Theo on the way out. He let me, which is a big deal for him. I drove home. I changed out of my volunteer shirt. I put on sweatpants. I made myself a grilled cheese in honor of my mother. I sat on my couch. At about 8:15, my phone rang. It was Calder. I let it ring twice. Then I picked it up. Hadley, he said. He sounded strange, tight. Calder. How's the gala? Hadley. Where are you right now? Home. Why? Can you come down here? To the gala? Yes. Mum's asking for you. The keynote speaker. Hadley. She said your name from the stage. I sat down on my own couch, as if I hadn't been sitting on it already. What? She said your name. She told the whole room that her son was tutored, that Theo was tutored by you. She said you were the reason he could read. Mum's standing here looking like she's been hit by a truck. The Hendersons are asking who you are. The whole table wants to meet you. I didn't say anything. I could hear behind him the murmur of a ballroom, the clink of cutlery, someone laughing far away. Hadley, he said, I'm here. Will you come? I sat in my sweatpants on my couch in my Leslieville walk-up, and I thought about that question for a long, long second. No, I said. No, Calder, I won't. Hadley, your mother told me I wasn't the right caliber, I said. And I wasn't going to argue. I was going to let her have her night. But I'm not going to show up now, because suddenly I'm useful. I'm not a prop. I'm not a redemption story for her to wheel out in front of the Hendersons. I'm a person. It's not like that, Hadley, please. Calder, I said. Did you know about Theo? He paused. No. No. I didn't know his name. I knew you tutored a kid. I didn't. Hadley, I didn't know. That's the problem, I said. You didn't know. You never know. He was quiet for a long time. I said, I'm going to bed now. He was quiet for a long time. I said, I'm going to bed now. I'll come by tomorrow and get my things. Hadley, what? You're a kind man, Calder. You read me Leonard Cohen in bed. I loved you. I want you to remember that I loved you. But your mother was right about one thing. I'm not the right caliber for that room. Not because I'm beneath it, because I'm not for sale to it, and you didn't see the difference. I hung up. I sat there for a while. The rain had turned to snow, big, slow flakes the size of quarters, the way it gets in Toronto sometimes right before Christmas. I made another tea. I watched the snow. The next morning, on Christmas Day, my mother called me at 7. She'd had a feeling, she said. I told her everything. She listened. When I was done, she said, "Come home for the week, sweetheart. Your brother's bringing the dog." I packed a bag. I drove up the 401 in fresh snow, and the road was almost empty. Just the long, quiet stretches between Belleville and Kingston, where the trees go on forever. I cried a little, and then I didn't. My ring. I left on my kitchen counter, with a note. I didn't write much. I wrote, "Thank you for 4 good years. I hope you grow into the man you almost are." I left a key under the mat for the super. I got back from Ottawa on the 2nd of January. There were 3 voicemails from Calder and 1 from Persephone. Persephone's was the surprising one. She said she'd like to apologize. She said she'd been wrong. She said the Hendersons had asked about me again at the brunch the next morning, and that Theo's mum had told her, quietly, kindly, exactly who I was and what I did, and that it had been one of the most humbling conversations of her life. I didn't call her back. I'm not proud of that, exactly. But I'm not ashamed of it either. Some apologies are about the person giving them. I let her keep that one. Calder showed up at the bakery downstairs from my building on the 3rd. He was waiting on the sidewalk when I came down for a pastry. He'd lost weight. He looked tired. He said, "Can we talk?" I said, "Sure, come up." We sat in my kitchen. He drank tea. He apologized in a long, halting way that I think he meant. He told me his mother was a snob, and he'd been raised by a snob, and he didn't always see when he was being one too. He told me he'd quit the family business and was looking at smaller firms. He told me he'd been seeing a therapist for 2 weeks. He said, "Will you give me another chance?" I looked at him for a long time. "Calder," I said, "I think you're going to be a good man. I think you're already on your way. But I don't want to be the woman who taught you how. I want to be the woman who got taught herself." He nodded. His eyes were wet. He didn't fight me. That was the kindest thing he ever did. He left. I haven't seen him since. It's been 2 years. I still teach grade 3 at Maplewood. I still tutor at the Learning Center on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Theo's in grade 6 now and reads at an 8th grade level, and his mum, whose name is Daisy, has become one of my closest friends. We had dinner last Sunday. She and her wife. Yes, that part was a surprise too. But a happy one. Invited me over and made me jollof rice and asked me to be Theo's godmother. I cried at the kitchen table. So did a Daisy. Her wife laughed at us and poured more wine. The Henderson Foundation reached out to me last spring. They asked if I'd consider joining their literacy advisory board. I said yes. I sit at the table now, 2 Saturdays a month, with people who care about what I do for a living. Persephone is no longer on the board. I didn't ask why. I didn't need to. I dated a little. The first year. Nothing serious. Last summer, I met a man at a benefit barbecue for the foundation. He was a paramedic from Hamilton, divorced, 2 kids, slow and steady, and not from money. His name doesn't matter for this story, because this story isn't about him. But I'll tell you this. The first time I told him I was a teacher, he said, "Oh, good. The world needs more of you." And then he asked me what grade. And then he listened to the answer. That's all I ever wanted. That's all any of us wants, I think, to be looked at by the people who claim to love us, and to be seen for the work of our hands. I'm not just a teacher. There is no such thing as just. I learned that the hard way, in a Leslieville walk-up, on a Christmas Eve, in my sweatpants, while a snowstorm came down over Toronto and a little boy named Theo, somewhere across the city, took his first turn at a microphone and told a ballroom full of donors that his teacher had taught him how to read. I wasn't in the room. I didn't need to be. I'd already been there, every Tuesday and Thursday, for a year. That was the whole story. That was the caliber. I've thought about that Christmas Eve a lot since it happened. Not the phone call. Not the part where Calder begged me to come down to the Royal York and let his mother save face in front of the Hendersons. That part fades. What stays with me is the quieter thing. The long string of small choices that led to me sitting on my couch in sweatpants with a grilled cheese, while a little boy I'd tutored on Tuesdays told a ballroom what reading had given him. Nothing in that night was an accident. Persephone treated me like I was less than her donors, because she'd been treating people that way her whole life. And one day, the world balanced its books. Calder couldn't see his mother for what she was, because he'd been raised never to. And I'd been showing up at a learning center in Riverdale every Tuesday and Thursday for a year. Not because I knew it would matter, but because Theo needed help with his reading and I was the one who could give it. Cause and effect. We don't always see the line, but it's there. Every shift you take, every kid you stay late for, every time you choose patience over pride. It's all going somewhere, even when you can't see where. There are 3 things I'd want anyone to take from this, if it's worth anything at all. The first is decency. Persephone had wealth, polish, a fountain pen and a Forest Hill address, but no decency. And in the end, none of the rest of it could buy her the moment she wanted that night. Decency is the only currency that holds its value. Be honest with the people who love you. Don't shrink someone smaller so you can feel taller. The second is wisdom, and by wisdom I mean the long, plain kind. The kind my mother had, sitting at her kitchen table in Alta Vista with a grilled cheese, telling me that a man who lets you be diminished will let you be diminished forever. Listen to the people who've already paid the tuition on the lessons you're about to learn. They are not trying to wound you. They are trying to spare you. The third is grit. Quiet grit. The kind that doesn't make a scene. I didn't go down to that ballroom and shame anyone. I didn't post about it. I drove to my mother's, ate her soup, came home, packed a bag, left a note. Grit isn't about how loud you can be when you've been wronged. Grit is being able to walk out of a 4-year relationship with your ring on the counter and your dignity in your pocket, and start the next chapter without bitterness sitting on your shoulder. I still teach grade 3. I still tutor on Tuesdays. Daisy and Theo are family to me now. The world didn't owe me a happy ending, but I built one anyway. The same way I'd built everything else. One Tuesday at a time. That's the caliber I'd wish for anyone who's ever been told they weren't enough.